The recently completed Surat Diamond Bourse has become the world's largest office building, surpassing America's Pentagon. Today we have with us the woman behind that mammoth architecture, Sonali Rastogi. Thank you, Sonali, for talking to ET Infra. Media is quite criticized for this question, but today I will take the liberty of asking this question to you. How does it feel to design the world's largest office building?
Actually, it's very exciting. It never started off as wanting to design the world's largest building, but it was to be commissioned to do this project by a large community that came together to make it happen for themselves. So to be part of the story of the diamond merchants that came together as a community and enabled themselves to conceive of a project at this scale, to do an international competition for it, to choose an architect who met their desired brief. I think the whole process was exciting, to be part of this large community that enables itself.
Right. So usually when we look at architecture, there are the structures get a lot of inspiration from old buildings, ancient buildings. For example, even the parliament is designed on an ancient structure in Gwalior. So when you design these structures, what is the thought behind such buildings? What is the thought behind the designs that you conceptualize, that you think of even for that matter?
So, to answer this question, I think architecture, I have to describe it first as to what I consider as inspiration. So, ancient buildings were a response to climate, more often much better response than what we do today. They were a response to the technology available. They were a response to the craft available, the human resource available, and they were the response to the ambition and aspiration of a society. Here, the Surat Diamond Bourse is the ambition and aspiration of a community of diamond merchants, okay, which are all belonging to the same social class, as well as this is now laying a seed building for a new city called Dream City on the fringes of Surat to come up. This is the first building. This is supposed to be an icon, an attractor, whereby when 65,000 people are coming in to work here every day, the entire city is supposed to spawn off it. Okay, so one can say that there are many cities in the world that took place because an iconic structure came up. Secondly, sustainability. This building is as sustainable as as one would desire today, because it consumes 50% less energy than the best green standards. It relies on natural ventilation. Now, almost all of our traditional buildings relied on natural ventilation. Right. Okay, it relies on creating microclimate, okay, which we have done through using a modern technology called radiant cooling. Okay, now therefore, to say, is the visual to be contextually inspired, or is the process of thinking to be contextually inspired? The fact that these are courtyard buildings where community gets together, carries on their daily activity, the fact that it's not, the entire circulation is treated as a social space, because like a bazaar where people have chance meetings and they interact in that way. So yes, if you were to ask me visually in 1 second when I look at it, does it look like a regionally inspired building? Perhaps not. But then in its spirit, in its planning principles, courtyard planning, street planning, bazaar planning, it is absolutely inspired by the local tradition.
So will it be correct to say that this is how the integration happens between the old and the new, the traditional and the modern? This is how it happens, keeping the sustainability aspect, which is a very important, essential aspect, in mind?
Yes, I would say in this particular project, it happens like that. The life cycle of the people and the lifestyle of the people was very much the source of inspiration, how the project was designed. The carrying on of the diamond trade, which happens in the formal ways inside the office and the informal ways, literally on streets, under the shade of trees, and making a provision in the planning for all of that to happen in these shaded courtyards. So yes, this is how not just tradition and modernity meet, but this is how society sits well within its context.
So, do you see more such buildings coming up in the future?
I hope so.
Are you, are you working on similar projects elsewhere as well?
You know, similar will be a tough call because I don't know how many communities can self-organize themselves to dream so big. Right. They are already, Surat itself carries out probably the maximum amount of diamond trade of polishing and cutting in the world, and it will grow. It will grow and bring on many more aspects of the diamond trade from within this center. So yes, if other communities dream it up. Yes.
So if you could just walk us through that building, the iconic building that you're talking about. What was the brief given to you, if at all it was given to you while designing that building?
So the brief was that 60 to 70,000 people will come into work at the same time. How will they negotiate the building? Then a brief was for us to understand how they do their business well. Right. So there is a lot of diamond trading, there's a lot of internal trading in between the various merchants, there is a lot of outgoing trading, so there's a lot of money, security, finances involved. Yet there has to be the kind of democracy and seamlessness with which one can freely move within a bazaar. You know, so we understood that security is only at the perimeter. We understood that when you're making one such a large building and 65,000 people are entering within the same 15-minute span, how can they all reach offices within a limited time period? And that time period is we managed to simulate and define as 3 to 7 minutes. Okay, there is a certain democracy in the way the planning has been done. The way an office is organized within the building is the same for the 200 square feet office up to the 25,000 square feet office. And that is also because we understood how this community works. And how small or big is only a financial criteria. It is not a organizational criteria, right? So therefore a certain level of democracy exists within this community. So the building has a democratic planning, building has planning of infrastructure level thinking of how people move.
Democratic planning, what exactly?
So a small merchant and a larger merchant has to have the same facilities, has to have the same way in which they approach the offices, the same way in which they meet their clients, has to have same access to open air, to building amenities, to lifts, to vertical transportation, to common area, you know, to what I'm calling the bazaar-like circulation area. So everybody has to have everything in the same measure, not dependent on that he is a small trader, so he goes to the back of the building somewhere, and he is a big trader, so he stands up in front. So it's a very democratic, equal planning.
And how different was designing this building vis-a-vis the other buildings that you have designed in the past?
You know, as an architect, that's a hard question, because see, architecture is a profession of science, creativity, community, and technology. Okay, so, and Morphogenesis, the company I co-founded with Sonali Rastogi, we have an operative philosophy called SOUL, which is sustainability, optimization, unique and livable. Okay, now these 4 criteria, together with the 4 inherent qualities I spoke about as a definition of architecture, can be put together in millions of permutations and combinations. I think more important that is to classify whether a building is different from another. I think more important is to classify that has the design exploration, solutions hunting, aspiration fulfillment, has that been approached keeping all these criteria in mind?
Interestingly, you mentioned about the use of technology while designing the new age buildings. With the usage of technology, how and keeping sustainability in mind, how do you create that balance when you design it? Is it even possible, or it comes later when you're not conceptualizing, and when you conceptualize a building, it is purely an art at that point of time?
No. In fact, if the criteria that are missed out in the conceptualization of the project, in my opinion, can never be brought back. Okay, so the technology which is going to be used in building the building, the technology that is going to be used in testing the building, testing meaning putting models to test, for example, simulations of energy, simulations of how people move. You can simulate all that today. So what architects would have done heuristically earlier, today you can simulate it in a software and test whether the 3 to 7 minute criteria is being met. We can test heat, how much heat gain is by the building. We can test how much annual heat falls onto the building, what is the radiation. We can simulate many things which earlier architects used to do heuristically. Right. So that's one use of technology. Another use of technology is for example, what we've done, which is radiant cooling. Radiant cooling is actually putting pipes into the flooring and then sending chilled water through, which is all recycled and keeps running through the building, which actually cools the floor, which radiates coolth into the environment, which is how we have non-air conditioned circulation throughout the building, just ventilated, right? And once the temperature, let's say outside your office, when it's 45 outside, if the temperature of the floor outside your office is 35, then obviously it is easier for you to maintain the 25 inside your office, right? So technology can be used in construction, technology can be used in the design process in simulation, okay? Technology can be used, of course, in the physical act of modeling the building. Technology can be used in various ways. For example, you can use technology to accelerate wind through the, already the design is a funnel shaped design that accelerates wind movement. You can further pick it up. So, because what does a human being need? They need to lower the temperature and they need to have breeze, and you're mostly comfortable anywhere. Right. So, technology has to be thought about in every usage from the conceptualization of the building. It's not an overlay.
Okay. So again, I'll come to the creativity aspect just purely from that point of view. When you get a project in hand, when you bag a contract, what is the first thought when you think of designing a new building? What one thought inspires you to design a building?
So actually, it's hardly ever one thought. So there is multiple thoughts which we, as a mature practice, 27, 28 years almost now, we have come up with a one word for it, rather one acronym called project initiation document. So first thing we do is spend a lot of time on the project initiation document. This document carries all the stakeholders' thoughts on the project. So it carries the policies that are applicable. It carries the future development of potential of this area. It carries contextual studies from the past. It carries every safety norm. Then it carries the client brief. Okay, sometimes the brief is just a numeric brief, these many square meters, these many people. Sometimes it's more, it's an aspiration that this is what I wish my building to be. Then there are other stakeholders involved. Quite often there are stakeholders who we can meet, which are the potential users of the building, and understand that what are their criterias. Sometimes we imagine the stakeholder, that this is what.
That?
So that's the advantage of having a large team. We sit and quiz each other. There is a lot of material available online. We go back to the client again and again. Saying that, okay, if this is who the building is going to be used by that you're making, can we meet some of these people, get their inputs?
And usually the ideas given by them are all creative ideas?
So mostly not. No, mostly this is, see, first when I talk to you about soul, it's the last L of it was livability. That what do they consider as livable is what I ask them. I am not asking them for creative idea, what do you want your building to look like? No, no. Okay. It's more the livability criteria. That how do they expect to use it, what would they look for betterment, for example, when we were talking in Surat, right, I understood from talking to the stakeholders that a lot of the junior level traders or polishers or workers will get up at 4:30 in the morning, leave home at 5:30, take a 3.5 to 4 hour train journey to Mumbai, arrive at wherever they are doing their diamond business. There is an old diamond district and there is a Bourse even in Mumbai. Then work there till 6:30, then again to catch a train, get back to Surat by 11, to go to bed and wake up at 4:30 again. And that was their life 5 to 6 days a week. Okay, so there is a full rupture of social structure. Like the men, usually this business has mostly men so far in trading polishing community. Now all the men are missing from these households. So we talk about the Indian family structure. Okay, but the man of the house is gone. Right? Quite often to not meet their children even once a week. Okay, but they're all living in the same house because moving to Mumbai is financially probably not viable. Right? So these are the pain points we understood. Right?
And how did you bring that in the architecture?
So how did we bring that in the architecture is that we understood that there are a lot of informal traders who actually don't even have a shop or a house over there. Like they go there, they do this job like and exchange diamonds or get some diamonds back for polishing, do it in Surat, take it back or do whatever. So for us the courtyard planning became very important. Now, and even when you go inside the building, you'll see a lot of internal gardens. They are to kind of simulate the park environment, like park bench sitting and trading that they do, under the tree trading that they do. So for us, we thought of 65,000 formal people working there, but several thousand informal people coming there as well. Right? So which is what gave us the idea that all our movement space, circulation, right now their circulation is the road and then the building. So they trade on the road. So all our circulation in the building is designed for people to pause and be there, not just hato rasta do chalo. Right? Similarly, the courtyards are designed, including the courtyard design for furniture, hardscape, softscape, is designed for people to spend time in there. You know,
and they do also.
I'm hoping they will start using the space from 1st of November. But, and then of course we talked about technology a little bit earlier today. So of course we tested all of these outdoor spaces, that the shading that we have envisaged by keeping the distance between buildings in a certain way, keeping the orientation of the building in such a way. It's very easy to test in a software that whether at least for 2/3 of the day we are getting shading. Right? So we did that. So we've created the situation where people can continue working in their lifestyle, not suddenly become this corporate thing which they don't understand, which is not one with their culture. They are very efficient people. They manage 90 to 95% of the polishing trade of the people.
Office structure.
And why should they?
Yeah.
They've become the most successful in this trade in the world. In fact, from my knowledge, they have a large impact on other diamond markets in the world. So why should they change? I mean, I feel there's something to be learned from them.
That's true. And I'm glad you mentioned about how this diamond trading is a male-dominated industry, but so is architecture, right? And you have spent close to 3 decades in this industry. What has changed for a woman in this industry in the last 30 years or 10 years or 20 years, any time frame that you can think of?
So firstly, your very first statement, architecture is a male-dominated profession. So when my parents, who are architects, when they went to college, there used to be 1 or 2 women in a batch. When I went to architecture college, there were 16 out of 80. So we were at 20%, right? Today, almost all the architecture colleges, almost all across the country, are more than 50% women, right? So it's a relative statement that architecture is a male-dominated profession, because in education it definitely is not. Yes, I will say that in senior positions, maybe there are fewer women in architectural firms, but I think that has more to do with understanding why are there fewer women in leadership position in every industry, not specifically architecture, because that has a lot to do with the life cycle of a woman, family, child rearing years, all of that. And it's a longer discussion, so I'm not going to get into that. I think if I was to simplify your question, architecture is a male-dominated profession.
Basically, when you started off from and where it has reached now.
I think it's been male-dominated only in certain verticals of architecture. Which is, let's say, I would say developer-driven verticals, which tend to be large commercial projects or large residential sort of condominium sort of projects. I think more in that segment you see fewer women in a boardroom, but if you go into, for example, institutional work, you go into educational institutes, you go into interior design, you go into retail design, it's private residence design. It's more women dominated, I would say.
And this trend has been like
Always, I think.
it has always been the case.
I think women in architecture have always found easier to be in these verticals that I'm talking about, which today they are probably dominating in many sectors. So if you see fewer women in architecture, I think the problem is not so much about architecture, it's a problem of women at the workplace in general.
But then you said that there's a certain stream of architecture where you see less women. Is it because they have to deal with a certain kind of clientele? Is it that one of the?
No, I wouldn't.
But generally,
I wouldn't say it so strongly.
Oh, right.
That it is because they have to deal with a certain kind of clientele, because developer as a profession, which was kind of a new profession when we started morphogenesis in the 90s, is now a well-established profession. There are developers of every kind all over the country. There was hardly any private developers when we started this company. So I would say it's because of the client being a certain type. There's every kind of developer, right? Okay. I just think that's a segment which has probably very less flexibility, and the projects are very, very long, and they are large, so they take years to finish, and there's very little flexibility in the deliverables, in the timelines. So I think it's just mainly probably that. And then it's a vicious cycle. When you see fewer women in the boardroom, you expect fewer women in the boardroom. And then when you see some, you wonder why are they there. But I think the problem is not as intense now.
Not as intense.
No.
And just coming back again to the Surat Diamond Bourse here, what have been your key learnings from that project, and especially that it has found a mention in Prime Minister's speech as well. So what has been your key learnings, and where do you go from here as an architect, and what would you be replicating in the future projects that you have?
So it's interesting when in our architecture curriculum in colleges, when we are taught how to understand context, we get taken to field trips where we'll go to a potter's colony, or we'll go to impoverished artist colony, or we will go to sort of a Cheshire home and understand what the needs of such children are. So that's typically like a very, very specific grouping type of people who are usually a smaller community, and we are taken to understand those. And from there we understand context, okay? Or we go to some historical site to understand context. In the Surat project, understanding and observing how a community works, how it succeeds, how it thinks, how it divides itself into groups to enable such a large dream seamlessly, and really a different way of thinking about professionalism. Completely different way of thinking about professionalism. The client took a decision, this is the design we like for XYZ reason. Then almost through the course of the project, we were always given the decision making position about any design decision. And if they had concerns, they would just say, oh, our concern is this, but I'm sure you would know best how to address it. So they never tried to hold our hand and make us do things. We were given, you know your job, you please do it. These are our concerns. Our job is to make sure the money stays continuous. Our job is to make sure it happens in time. Our job is to make sure it happens in budget. So they had committees, like obviously when we are designing for 4,500 clients which belong to this committee. They would have a building committee, a procurement committee, XYZ committee, permissions committee, every type of committee. And an architect's role was understood as you're the designer, you're the creator, you're the enabler. We were never asked to do anything besides that. So if I had to go and present, let's say something had to go for sanction, I would just go and present to the committee that is in charge of making sure sanction process is seamless, explain to them what I'm thinking, what should be happening, and they would go make it happen, right? And everybody had a job description nicely laid out, no overlaps. If I said, okay, I want the building to look like this and this material is coming out of the budget, They would say, okay, explain to us what this material is that you want to use. I would explain. They would go and find factories, they would go negotiate because they had the scale to negotiate. You know, like, you know, of course, if you're placing the world's largest order of tiles, then you can negotiate it better.
Right.
Or they would go to the source. And another thing that I really liked about them, they were always looking out for first their own diamond community, then the larger Saurashtrian community, then the larger Gujarati community. So they were kind of moving up like, okay, if anyone has to benefit from this building, first everybody around us should benefit. Then the next round of Gujarati should benefit, then this, then that. So they were also the thought process of how they give out their orders was very much based around localizing everything as much as possible. Now, which is, we understand it from a sustainability perspective, that do local buying as much as possible. But they understand it from a social perspective, that support everybody near you as much as possible, right? Then the fact that they barely ever stopped construction even during COVID, because their story was, yahan kaun aa raha hai? Like, this is out in the middle of nowhere. So let's hold everyone captive, because rather than laborers walk across the country and have reverse migration, they probably created the largest labor colony. I could, like, till your eyes could see, there was a labor colony. Okay. And then everybody was provided food, everybody was provided shelter, everybody stayed there, everybody ate from the same kitchen. Even if I went to site as an architect, the same thali would arrive for me, you know, as would arrive for everybody else. So they said, if we need to get this feat done, obviously we can't be struggling with labor shortage, right? So there's very clear thinking. Okay, now supposing during COVID glass processing is a problem. They said, okay, your factory is not processing anything because it's COVID for anyone else. Please make it a mobile factory and put it on site. We'll give you the place, we'll give you the water, please process the glass here so that our project is not delayed.
Very enterprising is.
And extremely good project managers. They know how to get a job done. And they pivot to make the job done all the time. They never change the plan, which is make the building. They keep pivoting to deal with every thing that shows up in the middle.
And once it was completed, what was the reaction?
They love it. They love it. They are not a very expressive folk, so they don't come around and say, yay, right? They don't. They're not very expressive people per se, but they've respectfully thanked us quite a lot. They are very happy because people from world over are actually taking trips to Surat Diamond Bourse, because obviously once they start becoming functional, which is post Prime Minister Modi's official inauguration, it will not be possible for people without permission to walk in, but right now people book tours and they are so happy showing them around the project. So obviously it's a huge achievement.
And what satisfies you the most as an architect? A good design, a satisfied client, or a good remuneration after that?
With the first two go hand in hand. Right? If you don't have a good design and a good solution which addresses all of these earlier sustainability, optimization, unique and livable perspectives, client is not going to be happy. They may not know how to word it, ki, give us this. But in my opinion, if your building is not, in today's day and age, if it's not inherently sustainable and doesn't have all of those criteria which are socio-cultural and technological involved in it, I don't know how you'll get a very happy client. I really don't know that. So for me, your first two components are tied into each other. Right. Financial remuneration, well, at one level, if that was a criteria main criteria for my life individually, I would never have been an architect. So yes, that's easier said. Having said that, in this project, professionalism was also towards payments to everybody, including the architects, right? So of course that also made it comfortable for everyone to finish it properly and in time, and as per the KRA set out for them. So of course, if the remuneration is as per commitments, as per contracts and done timely, why architecture? Everything in the world becomes much easier and enjoyable.
Right. Thank you and congratulations once again for this great achievement, and best of luck for your future endeavors.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.